Welcome to the Baseball Insiders, HOTTOGO. The New York Yankees stink out loud. We are in the midst of the World Series, live on a Monday afternoon, 3:30 Eastern, between games 2 and 3. The first two games, Dodgers victories, both tight, neither a blowout, still defeated the Yankees at the margins. The Dodgers stars were better. The Dodgers starting pitching showed up. Jack Flaherty and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, varying degrees of could have been Yankees, but weren't. Were both extremely good. And here we are in the Bronx for Derek Jeter's first pitch, with the Yankees desperately trying to salvage the series. And here I am talking to Fansided's MLB insider Robert Murray, who was on the scene for games 1 and 2, about what he learned there. Boots on the ground from watching that experience in person. A historic home run in game 1 that no one will ever forget. That's an all-time baseball moment. Doesn't feel fantastic for me, but certainly was an all-time baseball moment. And we're going to be talking about some other stuff throughout the league as well as getting to some of your questions. We got some good ones in the Discord today. But Robert Murray, you're back home. Games 1 and 2 in the books. How are you doing?
I'm great. It feels good to be home. But games 1 and 2 being there, game 1 was the best game I've ever been at. I know you would not agree with that.
Objectively, great game.
It was genuinely unbelievable being there. And I thought the Yankees had game 1. I thought as soon as they went up in the 10th inning that they were going to end up winning it. And then all of a sudden, Freddie Freeman hits the walk-off grand slam. And I've never been in an environment like that. It's the loudest stadium I've ever heard. The locker room after the game was electric. I'll go into some more details from the locker room that I ended up seeing and witnessing and hearing at some point during the show here, because there were some pretty cool moments. But I'm doing great. I'm good to be back. No, Drew, I am not a secret Dodgers fan. In fact, I actually grew up a fan of the San Francisco Giants. So furthest thing from that. So check your sources there. Adam Weinrib, how are you doing?
Yeah, if no one's riding with me, I know I got Giants fans with me for the rest of the week. It's on. The job is now the Yankees to make this difficult at the very least. Try to get it back to LA, see if some weird stuff happens. Maybe make sure that the Dodgers can't clinch on the Yankees turf. Hey, Justin, I see you in the comments asking me what's up. I'm sure that's kind and not at all Dodgers related. So hope you have a great day as well. You can join us and ask us questions between shows, except for not about the Los Angeles Dodgers. Please don't talk about them in the Discord, where you can either join us as a Rumor Mill tier member or an All-Star member with priority responses in the chat, or we also have other perks that we're cooking up. So please actually join the Rumor Mill channel, All-Star channel, and we'll even talk through how our perks are going to evolve heading into the offseason, which is the best time of year to be in the Discord and watching the show. Personally, I think the worst time of year to be anywhere is when the Yankees are getting dominated in the World Series. But you know what? Some of you might not agree with me, and that's okay. If you want to keep reading about baseball, unlike me, I want to live in a hole, subscribe to the Moonshot, which is our weekly baseball email newsletter where the Fansided MLB team, including Robert Murray, breaks down all the biggest stories in the big leagues with humor, insight, and behind-the-scenes info. So if you aren't yet signed up, what are you waiting for? On to the World Series itself. If you want to pop into my mentions and talk baseball, you might get ignored. I should have gone with my gut and picked Dodgers in 4. No, I did not actually think that was going to happen. But as soon as the Yankees lost game 1 in the deflating manner in which they did, I was like, I don't know if they're going to be winning a game in this series. You were there, of course. You said most incredible environment you've seen in baseball. I would agree. These are not blowouts. These are not embarrassments. These are two extremely tight games that the New York Yankees have lost on the margins with bad defense in game 1, where it got 2 extras, right? They lose because Nestor Cortes comes in to protect a 1-run lead in extra innings with Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman looming, and he doesn't do that job. It's a laughable decision. It's not the one I would have made. It's tough and unfair to Nestor Cortes. We'll get into all of that, but it's not a 2-2 game if Juan Soto doesn't misplay a single or a double into a triple. It's not a 2-2 game if Gleyber Torres doesn't kind of not pay attention and let a ball bounce around on an Ohtani double, letting Ohtani creep to third. So I would say we're not doing a Fire Aaron Boone podcast. I think some of the blame falls on Aaron Boone for that questionable decision. I'm not going to act like Tim Hill was going to be automatic against Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman in the 10th inning of World Series Game 1. But I think, did Aaron Boone make a move that maximized eyeballs on him and certainly put himself under fire? Yep. But that game was lost in myriad ways. The Yankees defense is where my blame lies. Either way, they've now got to dig out of it. So wondering what your impressions were from that game in particular about the way that the Yankees have gone down in this series.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. It's not just an Aaron Boone thing. I did not agree with the Nestor Cortes decision either, but it's, you look at defense, they had multiple opportunities to put up more runs, did not do that. They've struggled offensively. Aaron Judge has gone silent in the first 2 games, and I think that is definitely worthy of raising the alarm bells for sure. Yeah. But going back to the Nestor Cortes decision, because they had Cortes and Tim Hill warming up. And obviously in the moment did not agree with Nestor Cortes coming in. But I think if you end up getting, like, Cortes immediately got Ohtani out, but then remember, Alex Verdugo ended up, like, he threw the ball from the stands and allowed the runners to move up to second and third bases. I think if the runners are on first and second base, Cortes pitches to Mookie Betts. I think as soon as those guys moved up to second and third, the equation changed. And immediately they walked Mookie Betts, put him on first base because they preferred the lefty-lefty matchup. I think if you put in Tim Hill, he is obviously lefty-lefty for Ohtani, lefty-lefty for Freeman, but he struggles against right-handed hitters. And I think that was part of their calculus there. That's at least my thinking. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's at least something that's been in the back of my mind since that decision was made. Yeah. Obviously it backfired. I do think the Verdugo mishap there is not being talked about enough, because I think that changed the equation for the Yankees. But there is absolutely no doubting whatsoever. They are on the brink right now. They're not going to come back unless Judge steps up, because he has been, I've got to call it like you see, he's been awful in games 1 and 2. He's striking out like crazy. When you sign a guy for $300+ million and you make him the captain of your team and you build the franchise around him, you need him to step up in the biggest moments. He could not have come up more empty in games 1 and 2. And if they end up getting swept, or if they lose in 5 games and he has not bounced back at all, I think this offseason is going to be filled with Aaron Judge slander. And I don't know if that's fair or not, but that's just the reality of the struggle right now.
Yeah. Again, it's as simple as that. Aaron Boone pressed the wrong button at the end of game 1. And I'm curious to hear about, what people said after that game, whether you were able to talk to Nestor or not, because that it struck me mostly as unfair to someone who hasn't pitched in 30+ days to say, look, there are shows of faith, and then there's what that is, which is kind of like, I believe in you, you believe in you, but it's also on the manager to know when it's foolish or not to put someone else in a position to more than likely fail. And I'm not going to act like Tim Hill is some home run option, which some people are out there being like, basically equating Tim Hill to being like an ultimate stopper. Like, you had this, this golden goose and you went with Nestor Cortes. You're an idiot. Like, Tim Hill gave up 3 hits and 4 batters in game 1 of the ALCS. This is Shohei Ohtani and Betts and Freeman at the plate, right? There's no guarantee here. It's possible it ends on 1 pitch. Ohtani missed a Nestor cookie. Otherwise, it could have ended on 1 pitch. But you're right, Verdugo falling into the stands, the runners automatically advancing. That is a huge play, because I do think he attacks Betts with runners on first and second. There was an earlier question about my stress levels. They were relatively weirdly low, kind of serene when you're at a moment of crossroads in baseball history like that. Maybe partially because it's so easy to envision the thing going wrong. Like, my stress is, this sounds dumb, maybe fans can corroborate and back it up, but it's stressful for me when there are 99 good outcomes and 1 potential horrible outcome, and the horrible outcome is eating at me. And then when it happens, you're like, oh my God, it's that nightmare I had. Ohtani and Betts and Freeman up as the winning run, especially Freeman with the winning run in scoring position. Yeah. You're kind of just like, this is one of the best players in baseball. And the unexpected outcome is they get him out and he doesn't do the job. So when the grand slam leaves the bat, also first pitch, you're kind of like, all right, sure, saw that coming. But it did by and large feel from an outside perspective like that could very well be the end of a series that we all kind of wanted to go much longer. And you're right, the Aaron Judge thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. There are some viral tweets about how people should boo him tonight. They should not boo him. That is absurd. And guess what? It's also not going to happen. Hopefully, fingers crossed. If it does, you'll see me lambasting those people on Thursday's pod. But it is a very real conversation, and I think Judge got a convenient distraction in game one in the Boone, Nestor, Tim Hill conversation because he looked flat out overmatched, got a single with the bases empty. But game two, he wasn't so lucky because it was 5 for 8 with 1 for 8 with 5 Ks. And then he ended in the ninth inning when everyone was getting on base. He was the only one who could not move the line and struck out again against Blake Trinan. So entering today, it's already kind of at a fever pitch. If this series ends with a whimper, it's going to be pretty loud this offseason, and they really can't afford to let Juan Soto get away if that's the case.
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts here. First of all, I'm going to go off of your Yankees fans boo Aaron Judge thing. Like, I don't know who started that.
It's a Barstool guy. It's a Barstool guy.
That would be completely idiotic, and that you don't do that to your stars. If anything, I think what Yankees fans should do is they should do what Philly did with Trey Turner, where they gave him a standing ovation, and then immediately you saw the Turner just completely turn around. Like, Judge he's putting a lot of pressure on himself, and he wants to perform. This is not him not caring. If anything, he cares a lot, and he's struggling, and like obviously he wants to do well. So give him a standing ovation, build up his confidence, and maybe you end up watching him blossom and bounce this thing around. So who knows? But don't boo him. That'd be completely stupid. As far as going back to the Tim Hill thing, there's a reason why like Tim Hill was available during the season. Like the Yankees got him, I believe it was off of a DFA from the White Sox. So it's not like he's like an elite option by any means. He's been good for the Yankees. Don't get me wrong. But he's also like, look at Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, and Freddie Freeman. We're talking about $1 billion worth of players like going up against potentially a guy who was DFA in the middle of the season. Like either way, that's a mismatch. Like there's not many players or not many pitchers who can end up going up against those guys and have success. Like you got Ohtani out, like that's great. Like that's an unbelievable moment for Nestor Cortes. But it's just the Dodgers' lineup being able to attack these guys in so many different ways. And it eventually got to Cortes, it got to Aaron Boone, and it changed the entire outlook of this entire series. But another thing I wanted to dive into was some of the stuff that I ended up seeing like after the game there, because I remember walking out of the press box, and I was walking with Fabio Ardaya, who's one of my closest friends in life. And we looked at each other. We simultaneously said, "Holy shit!" Like we witnessed baseball history, and everyone else's reaction was very similar to that. It took a while for the locker room to open up after the game, but then you walk in, and you see players at their lockers, sitting there watching the video of Freddie Freeman. Like I remember going over by a couple players in the Dodgers' locker room, and they were watching it on repeat from multiple times, and all of a sudden one of the players looked down at his arm, and his arm was just covered in goosebumps. And I remember Evan Phillips talking to a guy next to his locker and just saying, "We witnessed baseball history tonight." And it was not lost on the players just how significant of a moment that was. That was easily the most, like, it was a locker room I'll never forget. I've gone to some pretty crazy locker rooms this postseason, but that one will stick in my mind because everyone knew in that moment that was such a huge moment in the series. They witnessed baseball history, the first walk-off grand slam in World Series history. But it also was not lost on me how while they were like celebrating that moment, they realized that the job was not done. And it kind of felt like they were following the Kobe Bryant mantra of like, the job isn't done until it's like officially done. So it was a really cool moment. It was something I'll never forget. And I don't know if Cortes ended up speaking after that game. I was not in the Yankees' locker room. Mm-hmm. But I know he is a class act. I'm sure he took accountability if he did speak to the media. But I was not there for that. But just overall, just an unbelievable moment. And no, Drew, that does not make me a Dodgers fan. I knew that comment was coming. As I said that, his comment came in.
You're glazing the soon-to-be world champions, man. You got to do what real baseball reporters do: not talk about the team that's about to win the World Series. That's the only way you beat the allegations.
Yeah, we're not doing Padres talk right now. The Padres are not in this. It's Dodgers and Yankees. I'm sorry, Drew, but that's just the reality.
It's Dodgers and technically the Yankees. I think they are still in it. Speaking of someone who is going to play in Game 3 for the Los Angeles Dodgers, Shohei Ohtani got a left shoulder subluxation in the 7th inning of Game 2, and all of America started doing the mental calculations of, well, don't like what I'm seeing from the Yankees so far, but if the door was ever going to be open for a comeback, it would involve Shohei Ohtani missing some time, whether it's Games 3 through 5, rest of the series, just Game 3, what have you. Apparently, he just popped that shoulder back in, and he's going to play Game 3. Let me be the first or the last or someone in the middle to say, how is that possible? What are we doing here? What's going on?
Not human. That's the only explanation for that. Because as soon as that injury happened and you got to see the video of him saying that he felt his shoulder pop out, my first thought was that he was out for the series. And now we got Dave Roberts telling Carl Ravitch that Ohtani's playing in Game 3. I don't know how that is humanly possible. I don't think he is human. It's remarkable. I'm curious to see how effective he is, though, because a shoulder popping out is not a small deal. So we'll see how effective he can be. But the fact that he's going to be in the lineup, real gamer.
Yeah, I think that the crux is that it's not humanly possible. It's Shohei Ohtani possible. So we'll see what he is able to do in Game 3 tonight at Yankee Stadium in front of a hostile crowd that does not enjoy Shohei Ohtani. And we'll be back on Thursday to wrap up the World Series or talk on an off day. I'm not sure. There was a Justin comment amidst all the trolling about the Juan Soto Dodgers interest report. I do feel like we probably should touch on that just because here we are, national stage. The interest is being drummed up by Scott Boras. There's a little bit of Phillies Soto reiteration today as well from Bob Nightingale. I believe all we know about Soto is the money matters, and clearly he's made it very far with the New York Yankees, and clearly the Mets are interested, and I would put the Dodgers in that bucket as well. You'd have to think, but any updates on what you're hearing about that?
Yeah, when I talked to Soto at Media Day right before the World Series started, and he made it clear, like somebody asked him about free agency and about money, and he also made it clear that he values winning. And I think any place that he goes to or any place that he considers in free agency is going to have to be a team that's contending, because clearly winning is very important to him. And yeah, like the Dodgers, they're a good team. Yep. They're a very good team. And the way that Shohei Ohtani's contract is structured, like he wanted the Dodgers to be able to add as many stars as possible. And maybe that includes a guy like Juan Soto. I know there's some people who are kind of doubting the report. I don't necessarily doubt it at all. I think it absolutely makes perfect sense. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dodgers are involved, but I also think that there's going to be more, like there's other teams that are going to be more like serious or more realistic, like the Yankees, the Mets, teams like that. I think those are the more real threats. But if the Dodgers are involved, then I guess you can't rule anything out because they're the Dodgers and they can spend a lot, and Ohtani's contract allows them to do that.
Time to get to the question on everyone's lips. Am I ready for the Giants to lose tonight? Courtesy of Canyon. Mean this with all due respect. If you think I am watching one snap of Giants Steelers on Monday Night Football, you are out of your mind. No chance. Good luck to the Steelers, though. TJ Watt, Defensive Player of the Year, MVP. Let's talk about the White Sox and Marlins managerial searches as best that we can, because we got some names eliminated from the White Sox search over the weekend. AJ Ellis bowed out. George Lombard maybe somewhat surprisingly bowed out. It feels like Will Venable is coming to the edge of being a candidate in both Miami and Chicago all of a sudden. John Heyman was pretty bullish on his potential fit in Chicago earlier today. Clayton McCullough, I believe, is out. Any thoughts on both fits, current candidates, what you're hearing from either of the managerial openings?
Yeah, I like Clayton McCullough. As you said, I would be very surprised if he ends up going to the White Sox based on what I gathered at the World Series. Do not expect him to be a finalist here for the Marlins unless something changes here. But we ended up seeing Will Venable's name mentioned with both of these openings, and I'm not surprised whatsoever. Venable has been a highly regarded candidate throughout the league for quite a while, and he's turned down other opportunities. So it's kind of surprising that he'd want to be in the running for these two jobs, because I think these are two of the worst openings that we've had in quite some time. So I don't necessarily know what's going into his logic there. I got to call like we see it. Like,
Yeah,
the White Sox.
That's what we do on this show, fair and balanced.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be realistic about it, because the White Sox, they are nowhere remotely close to being a contender. I do like Chris Getz, though. I know he's gotten a lot of flack, and honestly, rightfully so, after that 3-team trade with the Dodgers and Cardinals, because he got absolutely fleeced. But he's done a good job in a really difficult position otherwise. And as far as the Marlins go, like, they are down, according to Craig Mish, they are down to Venable and Guardians bench coach Craig Albernaz. So, I mean, maybe there's a chance for a mystery candidate at the end. I don't know. But either the White Sox or the Marlins, if they want Venable, they're going to have to hurry up. I believe Heyman, as we are speaking, I want to make sure I got this right. He says that Venable is in Miami interviewing for that job today. So maybe the White Sox, if they indeed like Venable, might lose out on their guy if the Marlins try to hire him on the spot with him being in town. Who knows? But those two managerial searches, from what I gather, are both progressing. I would not be surprised whatsoever if we have some clarity there today. And it sounds like the Giants are continuing to still, like, this is also not on the rundown, but the Giants are continuing to explore their options for a general manager. I don't know of anything imminent there, but I do know that they have been talking to some folks.
Want to hit on a Discord question too, relevant in the coaching search. We had Canyon in the All-Star channel ask about the Pirates hitting coach job, which obviously, there are very few managerial vacancies. Maybe these candidates, maybe Will Venable wants to wait around a couple of days and see what happens to Aaron Boone. Kidding, not kidding. But the Pirates are still sort of just kicking the tires on this hitting coach gig. So any insight there as well? Candidates are just why the process is taking the pace that it's taken on.
Yeah, because they ended up parting ways with Andy Haynes 2 to 3 weeks ago, and they're in no hurry to fill the job. They want to make sure they end up getting the right person for the job, because the World Series isn't even over yet. And
no, it is.
I had a feeling that was coming. But I would recommend patience for this. Like, they want to make sure they get this hire right, because they don't need to rush it. Free agency hasn't started yet. The World Series isn't over yet, despite what Adam just said. So they're continuing to talk to multiple candidates. Nothing is finalized. I don't believe anything is close. But yeah, the Pirates, they're doing their due diligence, and I give them credit for that. That's what they should be doing. And I also think by talking to more candidates, the more information you can gather to help your organization, but also to learn about other teams and their hitting philosophies. And I think that's also part of this equation for them as well. And yeah, the more, as much information as possible is not a bad thing. In fact, that's a good thing. So there's no news to report yet on the Pirates. I'm sorry, Canyon, I don't know if that's what you wanted. I did see your protest today on my Twitter feed, and I looked and I scrolled and I zoomed in. I was like, oh, there's Canyon. So your protest is making waves, Canyon. So I don't know if you're in. Oh, you are in here. So good job by you. That's excellent work by you. And it's growing too. 30 people. I'll give you an internet high five, Canyon. Good job.
There you go. Good job, man. Yeah, thank you for the question as well. No, the World Series is not technically over. I'm well aware. Although Robert is a good friend. He did give me a wellness check on Saturday night. As opposed to some of you who just send me troll mean comments and variations on Yankee quotes and bulletin board material. I would love to win a baseball game. Dodgers fans out there are going to have to explain. You guys have been whining a lot all postseason and all season. Do you consider your championship drought since 1988 or literally 4 years ago? Because if it's 88, then yeah, I get it. It's been a long time. But if it's 4 years ago, then tone down the rhetoric. You're the richest team in the sport, and you're about to win the World Series. Final points. Rays Stadium update. 2028, we already know they will be back in the region. So the urgency to rebuild the Trop is not necessarily as high as it's been after recent events. They're apparently not going to be playing in Durham or Montreal. But is it possible that they have already played their last game at the Trop somewhat secretly? Rob Manfred to Evan Drellick this weekend, quote, I think by Christmas they got to have a pretty good plan in place, and there's a lot to that. There sure is. I think the most likely outcome for me right now is they stay in the region, but do not play at that stadium.
I don't know. I think that's so fluid. There's a lot that goes into it, as Manfred said, that I'm not ready to side with one scenario or the other. I think anything is on the table. I hope it's not. They haven't played the last game at the Trop, especially if one of the reasons is like all the hurricane damage. I mean, that would kind of stink. But I think it's time for a new stadium there. I think it's time to. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to end up happening there. So I don't want to say one way or another, but I think anything is on the table.
Sweet. Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for the questions today. Apparently Dodgers fans are not counting the World Series from 4 years ago. Interesting. I would love to be able to not count a World Series that my team won as well. That sounds like some great privilege. But you've won the 2024 World Series, so I do want to congratulate you on that. It was a heartwarming title, and you captured it against all odds in just 2 games. Some might say even 1 game. So big ups to you for clinching the World Series in Game 1. And we'll see what happens. MLB Deadline News, actually, right before the buzzer here, talking about the Twins' ownership change. I mean, obviously, I would say probably too soon to tell there as well, but that's going to be a high-profile story that's going to define the offseason. So I did just want to hat tip it and say, well, let's not forget that the Twins scaled back payroll, didn't add payroll meaningfully, didn't make meaningful trade deadline additions, and then now all of a sudden are sort of exploring a sale this offseason.
Yeah, and that is a very high profile story. Like that's big news. What's going on there in Minnesota? I don't have any updates whatsoever on where that hiring process is going on, but I think it's a really good thing for the Twins in order to like get new ownership. Like it's, and that's I'm sorry. That's Drew. We'll get to you in a little bit. We'll get to you in a little bit. I think it's a good thing though for the Twins because they have a talented roster. They've been on the up and up, but they haven't invested significant resources into that job or into that roster, and I think it's really hurt them. So I know they end up getting Correa, but they could have done a lot more to upgrade that team. They have not. So I hope whoever ends up buying the team going forward invest more into that roster because they have some pieces in place. I think they have a good front office, good coaching staff, good roster. So, I mean, there's a lot of pieces to work with. And if you end up investing more into that roster, then I think you could end up having a pretty strong playoff contender. And Drew, I do not expect a rise to get extended.
There we go. The final question before we sign off was just going to be a little opening of the notebook. Anything that you do have that you'd like to touch on from around the league that is yet to be reported as we dive into Game 3 of the World Series, which, of course, does not matter because the series ended in Game 1. But still, it is being contested on the field. Pretty interesting. Anything else from around the league that you want to touch on?
I'll first address Hunter. Good question. I don't think Jett will be asleep this offseason, but there's not much you can do right now considering that the season or the World Series is still going on. But I think they will be active this winter. So maybe he comes out of his hibernation for you after all. But Jacob is still hibernating. That much I know. But one thing that I did pick up on at the World Series, I don't have timing on this. It could have been a year ago. It could have been. I legit have no idea on the timing of this. But at one point, the Tigers tried making an offer to extend Tariq Skubal, but it went nowhere. I don't think the offer was anything remotely close to competitive. And I don't believe there's been talk since. So he is a Boris guy. So you never see a Boris guy really accept a contract extension. So we'll see, but I would fully expect no extension for Skubal until he reaches free agency. And then, he'll reach free agency is my guess because that's what Boris clients do. And especially since he's coming off as strong of a year as he has, I think he's in position to make a lot of money. And Drew, I'll answer this one just to appease you here. Preller, I expect him to be active this winter. I think a Jackson Merrill extension should and will be a priority for them. But nothing cooking as of this point because, well, free agency hasn't started yet. So they're game planning. I expect Preller to be active, as I said, but patience.
Yes,
that is a very important word to remember for now and in the offseason as well.
We're all excited for the offseason, but remember last time, we do have to stay patient. And we will be here all offseason long. We are excited to talk about it. We will be here on Thursday at 3:30 Eastern to talk World Series. We'll be glazing the Dodgers some more, I presume. But let's see what happens when we get there. Thank you for your questions. As always, join us in the Discord between shows. If you've got more of them, we are happy to answer them to the best of our abilities. Subscribe to the Moonshot if you have not yet. Get on that list. What are you doing? Read Robert Murray on fansided.com. Read me in my DMs to you personally telling you that your words are hurtful and to stop talking about the World Series. I'm Adam Weinrib. Robert, we got one at the moment?
Shohei is officially in the lineup.
Oh, yeah, leading off.
Yeah, he is in the lineup today. That is pretty crazy. So that's all I got. Where we go. That's one last little news bit. But he is in the lineup today. Simply an
absolute maniac. There's nobody like him. We'll see how he performs. I'm going to bet pretty well. Robert Murray, thank you for joining me. Thanks for the insights and opening the doors of the locker room a little bit from World Series Game 1 and 2, which, even if you're not a Dodgers fan, was objectively historic.
Oh, it was incredible. We'll see. Hopefully it turns into a more competitive series. I don't want to sweep. I think it would make for great theater if it went 6 or 7, but we'll see. But I appreciate everyone for tuning in. I appreciate Adam for joining me here. I appreciate Joanne, our lovely producer, for doing her thing and dominating. And we'll see everyone back here on Thursday.
We sure will. Thanks for joining us, everybody. See you right back here 3 days from now. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.